Blog Talk Radio.
All right, good evening, everybody, and welcome to Golf Talk Live. I'm your host, Ted Odorico. Got a great show for you tonight. I've got two great gentlemen coming up here very shortly on the Coach's Corner panel discussion tonight, and I'll introduce them in just here in a second. And then a little bit later on, I'm going to be having LPGA teacher professional Rebecka Heinmert, who's been on the show here in actually a few months ago. She was on the show with Jamie Leno-Zimron, who's been on the show a number of times, both as a panelist guest and also as a featured guest. And Rebecca's going to be talking about how she got involved in golf, and then also about another retreat that they're going to be doing here towards the end of this month. So we'll talk a little bit about that when she comes on. And then I'm also going to recap a contest that I launched last week with none other than Byron Casper, son of legendary Billy Casper. A great opportunity for those of you that might be interested in a weekend away, a couple's weekend away, which includes 2 nights bed and breakfast and a few rounds of golf for the two of you as well. Throwing a nice package, rounding it up, of course, with a copy of Billy Casper's last book, The Big Three and Me. And I've read that book. Billy, before he passed away, had actually sent me an autographed copy of that book. And I've read it from front to back and back to front. It's a great read, so it's a great addition to the prize. Just to remind everybody, of course, we are live every Thursday evening from 6 to 8 p.m. Central. That's 7 to 9 for those of you on the Eastern Standard Time, and 4 to 6 for those of you out the Pacific Way are the times that the broadcast is live. If you want to find the broadcast, go to blogtalkradio.com, and up in the search key, type in Golf Talk Live, and that will take you to the main page. That's blogtalkradio.com/Golf Talk Live, and that will bring you to the main page. And, of course, we are live, as I said, from 6 to 8 Central. If for some reason you can't join us during the live broadcast, not to worry. Just visit that page, scroll down to the on-demand section, and all of the shows, of course, are auto-recorded, so you have an opportunity to listen to them at your convenience or at your leisure. Always would love to hear from you. Our guests, of course, call in live on the Thursday evening shows, but we would love to hear from you as well. If you have any questions or comments about the show, you're welcome to call in. Dial 646-716-4667, and you're welcome to join in the conversation. You can also email any questions or comments about the program to me personally at ted.golftalklive@gmail.com. That's ted.golftalklive@gmail.com. And, of course, always update on social media. On Facebook, go to Golf Talk Live blog page, and the show is updated there as well as my own personal page. And you're welcome to leave comments or post there as well, or if you have questions about the show. And also follow me on Twitter at Ted and Buck CEO, and that's CEO in capital letters. Thanks for all of the recent followers there as well. I got two great guests, as I said, joining me here on the Coach's Corner panel, and I'm going to bring them on here. First up is John Hughes. He's been on here many, many times, both as a panelist and also as a guest. He's a PGA Master Professional, and he's also the 2013 PGA of America Horton Smith recipient of that award. And he was also the Vice President and Secretary of the North Florida PGA section, and I believe there's been a change in that, and I want to double check with him when he comes on here in a second. And then, of course, joining the panel for the first time is Paul Castor. He is up in the New Jersey area. He's a golf coach, and he's also the Director of Instruction at the Forest Gate Country Club up in the New Jersey area. So, gentlemen, welcome to Golf Talk Live's Coach's Corner.
Hi, Ted. Thanks for having me.
You're quite welcome, guys. Always glad to have you. John, I just want to, the reason why I said that is I couldn't remember from the last time. Did you not say that there was a change, or you're still acting as the Vice President and Secretary of North Florida PGA section?
I'm now Vice President. Charlie Reimer of the Golf Channel is now our Secretary.
That's right. I knew there was a change. That's why I didn't want to read it out as was first up, and I couldn't remember what it was, and I meant to ask you before we went live, and I forgot. So, John, of course, as I mentioned, is the Vice President of the North Florida PGA section. Guys, I wanted to talk about on the panel discussion tonight a little bit of a Masters recap, if you will. One of the things I want to do is I wanted to examine some of the areas which I feel a lot of our amateur golfers out there could benefit from. And it's not meant to, some of the comments that I'm going to make are not meant to focus on any faults or anything that any individual players may have made, but rather to be used as a learning tool for some of the golfers. So let's begin with that. And Paul, since you're a newcomer to the panel discussion, I want to let you start off the discussion tonight, following up on this question. So, for example, Jordan Spieth, of course, we all know who he is. He's a great young professional who won the Masters last year and unfortunately didn't close it out this year. But he said something interesting after the third round that I thought was I particularly found very interesting, and I'll explain to you why, and then I want you to chime in, Paul, with some comments. He stated after his third round that he should have stuck with hitting his 3-wood off the tee, and that he felt that it caused a lot of unnecessary errors because he wasn't hitting his driver, obviously, that well. And you could see that, obviously, in his mind, he had made a mental error by not sticking with that plan and just sort of going as he did. And ultimately, I'm sure it cost him some strokes, which may have cost him the tournament ultimately. And if that's the case, what could our amateurs take away from this mistake?
Well, I think, in telling us that, Jordan was basically saying that he had a game plan. And, starting a round of golf, especially a tournament round, with a game plan is extremely important because you're making that plan based on rational thought ahead of time, not how you feel in the moment when you're playing under pressure.
Right.
And things definitely change when you're under pressure. And I think we saw that during the tournament for him, unfortunately. He probably made the decision to hit his 3-wood because it put him in better positions on the golf course, maybe relative to the trouble, the hazards, the bunkers. And he might have made that decision based on how he was actually hitting his driver for most of the week,
right,
which really wasn't that great, unfortunately. So I think, he deviated from something that probably made him feel pretty secure to doing something that was probably a little bit more risky, and that put more pressure on him.
Yeah, and John, I just want you to add to this, if you will. This is something that a lot of amateurs make, is they, as Paul just pointed out, they don't necessarily come in with a game plan, and they may not be playing in the Masters tournament or the U.S. Open or any other major tournament, but to them it could be their club championship, it could be maybe a corporate event. More often than not, they don't go in with a game plan. How important is it to have a game plan, regardless of what tournament you may be playing, and should you deviate from that game plan mid-round?
I totally agree with what Paul was saying, and the way I'll embellish that is great decisions are going to camouflage poor performances. What I mean by that is you got to have a game plan coming in, and throughout the round, that plan, like any good business plan or any good personal plan, is going to have to bend and flex based on the situations that you're in. When Jordan's talking about, I should have hit my 3-wood, what he's basically saying is, my performance with my driver is not that good, but right. I can camouflage that by hitting 3-wood. I don't have to hit driver. It's all about being able to, while in the moment, understand how your plan can bend and flex, yet stay on the path that you're trying to take. And hitting more 3-woods for Jordan, probably a great thing for most amateurs to understand that hitting 3-wood, if it puts you in play, what are you really sacrificing? Can you sacrifice the 10 or 12 yards you may not be hitting as far as the driver per se, in lieu of gaining, hey, I'm in play, versus who knows
right.
where I am? That's a great decision that will camouflage your poor performance. If your swing's off, but yet here's a club that works, why not do it? It's sort of a no-brainer But because we get caught in the moment and caught in the emotion of the moment, sometimes we just forget what moment we're in and go with what we feel not necessarily is our gut, but what we feel that we need to do without actually surveying the situation and making a great decision based on the situation you're in right now.
Right.
And it's
well
all
said.
part of that game plan.
Yeah, well said, both of you. Now, let me ask you, because both of you obviously have been teaching for a number of years and coaching and so forth. Is having a game plan part of your teaching philosophy, if you will, with your students? Do you try to encourage them to have a game plan? Even if it's just again playing with their friendly foursome on the weekend, or maybe a corporate event. Do you try to encourage them to put together a game plan before they head out? Is that something that you try to encourage them to do, Paul, and then John?
Without question. I actually think that the most common question I get, or statement I guess I hear when somebody comes for a golf lesson for the first time is, I just wish I could be a little bit more consistent. Mm-hmm. And what people really don't realize is that they are. If you put somebody on on flight scope, I use flight scope, but I also use shot by shot, which is a different thing. But you have somebody hit maybe 28 irons or 5 hybrids on shot by shot or on flight scope, you'll see a very predictable pattern.
Right.
You'll see, a pretty repeating ball flight. It just might not be exactly where that person wants to go. So
right.
They might be aiming it at a flag and then hitting it, 10, 15 yards to the left of it. But if you look at that pattern, it's extremely repeatable. It's just that they're not aiming their pattern.
Right.
So that's one example of game planning. If you know that you have a certain kind of ball flight, you don't play golf with the ball flight you wish you had. You play golf with the ball flight that you got.
Yeah, that's true.
A lot of golfers play golf with the ball flight that they wish they had, and so they end up short of greens and in lots of trouble. And unfortunately, a lot of the mistakes that golfers make are kind of ego based. So if you set out to understand what you actually do and then you make a plan based on that, you're just going to play a lot better. And I think, thinking ahead of time when you have a clear head about what you're going to do during a tournament round, it's very, very valuable. And a tournament round can be different for different people. For me, right, it might be a qualifier for the state open. But a tournament round might be, an important match with a friend to one of my students. So making sure that they plan ahead of time and decide on this hole I'm going to hit, 4 hybrid because it's going to prevent me from being able to even get the ball into that hazard that I always go into, is going to save them a lot of trouble and help them preserve their momentum.
Yeah, and well said, Paul. And John, I think I pretty much know your answer as well. But if you want to, certainly elaborate. Having a game plan, as Paul indicated, is important. But a lot of amateurs, obviously, as we know, don't come in with a game plan, or as Paul just pointed out, they play with the shots they wish they had, and not with the shots they actually have. What do you try to do with your students to encourage them to come with a realistic game plan, but a game plan nonetheless?
Paul, I couldn't agree more. Everybody I always see is more consistent before I see them than when they leave me. I always tell them that. And they sort of look at me bewildered. What do you mean? I came here to get more consistent, which opens the door to the question, what's your definition of consistency? Which I asked everybody. And the definition's different for everybody. So it's based on that definition is how we come about the plan, which in turn hopefully will motivate this person. It's geared around them, not necessarily a predepositioned type plan that you may or may not agree with. A great example. I just came back from the RBC Heritage Pro-Am yesterday. I had a client up there with some friends, and he came to me about a month or so ago. I'd met him several months ago, but he came to me and said, I want to contribute. Last year I didn't contribute, and I want to contribute. So we really delved into what contribute meant to him. Playing best ball of the four plus your pro, to him, he wanted at least 2 holes to count. Mm-hmm. So the plan was just that. How do you contribute? And we, just like Paul said, we really researched over the course of a 3-week period, because there wasn't a whole lot of change to be made in 3 weeks, what it is that made him up as a golfer, not only physically but mentally and emotionally. So as the round went on, if things got a little askew, he could always go back to what this plan was to contribute. And that's exactly what happened. About the 13th hole, everybody sort of realized, hey, we're in this. And they were looking at scoreboards. And the 14th tee, if everybody knows what the 14th is at Harbor Town, a lengthy par 3 to a peninsula green. Everybody was clamming up. Everything got silent. Until that point, it was a pretty jovial foursome. That 3 holes, my player, who I was caddying for, just went off his plan. And by the middle of the 16th hole, still playable, actually middle of the 15th hole, I basically asked him, I said, do you remember what your plan was? And he says, yeah, to contribute. And one more question to follow it was, are you doing that? What are you doing over the 3 weeks that we prep for you to contribute that you've been able to contribute? And contribution to him not only was score. Midway through the round, we pointed out that even though his score didn't count, him jarring a par putt allowed 2 or 3 other people to go for a birdie putt, right, which enabled them to get the score. Long story short, he literally turned around, stepping backwards, stepping back to his initial plan. How do I contribute? And that plan was made around him, not his playing partners. We had no clue who we were going to play pro-wise with, so you can't build a plan around that as well. It was based around him and his strengths, his abilities. He ends up birdieing or net birdieing the last 3 holes coming in. His team rides them. They missed a playoff by 1 shot. Come in tied T2. They had a fantastic time, but at the end of it, he literally came back and says, I'm glad 3 weeks ago we made a plan, and the plan had nothing to do with scoring. It had everything to do with what I was capable of doing, so I could do one thing and feel like I contributed. He more than contributed throughout the day, and that's you literally have to go about it as an amateur. It doesn't matter what your skill level is. What is it you're trying to do? Really buckle down with your coach and figure out what you're capable of doing and set the goal. That's all we did. It was a really neat experience, but very apropos to the discussion we had.
Yeah, and that's an excellent point, John. Having a game plan, I agree with what both of you have said. I think it's important, even for the amateurs, to have a game plan, whether it's playing in a best ball situation or whether they're playing, as I said, for a club championship. Having that game plan, whatever it may be, gives you a perspective throughout the round to focus on, instead of focusing on all the other stuff. Instead of focusing on trouble and focusing on the negative aspects, you go in with a game plan and you focus on achieving that game plan. And as you said, John, it's not about the score. In his case, he wanted just to be able to contribute to his to the round itself. And he obviously was able to do that in spades. But again, having that game plan, I agree with both of you have said, is extremely important. All right, I want to move on to the next topic here. Again, it's keeping with the Masters theme. Paul, you kind of alluded a little bit to this somewhat, but Jordan had again, as he admittedly talked about in some of his interview, that he was leaking a lot of his shots to the right throughout his rounds. One of the questions I always want to ask, and I think the amateurs need to understand, this is another area as well that they need to really understand, is number one, talk about, Paul, I'm going to start with you, talk about whether or not a player should try to adjust mid-round and work with what they, or rather work with what they have at the moment and then correct it afterwards? And if so, why?
I definitely think that for the most part, people can't adjust during the round, especially if it's a competition, because you just have so much going on. Golf is a mental game, and when you're playing in a tournament, that it changes things. I mean, we all kind of know that. So I just don't think that it's realistic to expect yourself to be able to make some kind of an adjustment or mechanical change while you're trying to perform, out in the field, so to speak. I mean, if you think of a pitcher throwing a baseball, if he's having a bad game, my guess is most pitchers aren't going to think about their mechanics while they're out there on the mound, trying to throw strikes. So I think for the most part, you have to just change your strategy. And if you wanted to hit driver, but your driver's leaking too much, you have to hit a golf club that is going to get the ball in play. And ultimately, if you're hitting the ball into situations where you have no shot or where it's in hazards or, God forbid, OB, it just ruins the round. It ruins your prospects for success. So being able to drive the ball and advance it safely is just, it's critical. So I think, for most people are going to start thinking about their golf swing. That's the normal human tendency. Right. Is that when you start to lose control, you try to become more precise and more controlling. And usually that causes, the whole round to kind of, go the wrong way.
Right. John, just to add to that, obviously the professionals are a little bit different breed. They can make some minor tweaks and adjustments. They've played long enough and they understand their swings well enough that a minor adjustment can be made. But in the cases Paul suggested, even they will, if it's a major issue, they might, scale back. And, if the driver's not serving them well, they may, as many players, Tiger has done this to some degree. Freddie Couples has done this when his driver wasn't working. He'd scale back to a 3-wood, or even some cases they'll go to now most of them don't hit long irons anymore. They might go to a hybrid, but they'll scale back somewhat, will be about the most adjustment you'll see. But a lot of amateurs, of course, do the opposite, as Paul suggested, where they'll try to get into swing mechanics and things like that. How do we, get it through their head that that's not the time and the place to do it? It's to be done afterwards, as the pros do after the round. What do they do during the round to avoid that scenario?
I think for the average amateur, you both hit it right on the head. It's afterwards. But during the round, I would argue that there's not too many golf professionals, touring professionals, people who play for zillions of dollars, who can literally make a mechanical change midway through the round. You've got to be one of the 1/10 of the top 1% to be able to do that, and it's got to be the right day and the right round and the right situation for that to happen. What touring pros do that an amateur can do is, I'm going to call it, make a geometric change, meaning you're hitting a fade. Why are you on the left-hand side of the box? You should be on the right for the right-hander. That's a geometric change. It's not influential to a swing change so much as it provides more geometric area for that particular ball flight to work. The next change is obviously the scale down. Love how you put that. I'm going to scale it down. The similar way of describing that to the average amateur is when an infant learns to walk and they walk too fast, they fall over. They don't get up and walk at the same speed. They scale the speed down, mainly because of balance. And once the average amateur understands that their poor shots are due to poor balance, dynamic balance throughout the entire swing, all of a sudden the lights go on. But that doesn't mean it's a mechanical change. All that is, you know what? I'm going too fast. I need to scale this down. I'm going to go from driver to 3-wood, 3-wood to hybrid. maybe instead of taking a full swing, want to choke down and take a 3/4 swing because it keeps it in play. Those aren't mechanical changes. Those are decision-making changes based on what you're doing. And you can implement a geometric change very easily into that. It's not a Band-Aid. It's what's working at that particular time. If you're not putting effort into making the changes, then these are the only changes you can make. If you're not making the changes after the round, at the practice facility, this is the tool set you're limited with. And once people understand what their tool set is, sometimes they can go out and actually make it work. They can actually make it happen. It's those that really are striving to say, you know what, I want a bigger tool set. I want that bigger red box to put in the back of the garage. You know what, you got to go out and earn it, but you also have to know how to use those tools. And that's where the practice comes in. If you just want to go play, just stick with the geometric changes, stick with the decision-making as far as the correct clubs. It goes back to what I was saying before. Great decisions will camouflage poor performances. And if you make a geometric change, it's in theory a setup position. That in turn adds more camouflage to that poor performance.
Yeah, well said, guys. And you know, that's so true. You know, one of the things that I think that a lot of amateurs get stuck in, and this causes for, you know, multiple bad rounds, is they try to make you know, physical changes, not by adjusting, you know, what side of the tee box they're going to hit from, but they get into their swing mechanics, they get into position and things like that, and a whole myriad, adjusting their grip and so forth. And ultimately what ends up happening is they compound. It's like compounding interest. You know, if you you know, start your round with a modest interest, and then suddenly it gets compounded, you know, you have a lot of debt come the end of the round, so to speak. And that's essentially the same principle here. And John, that's what you're suggesting is rather than you know, making a lot of mechanical changes which are not going to serve you well, you can make some geometrical changes that can, as you said, camouflage you know, a bad situation and make it appear better than what it is. And ultimately you're going to end up scoring better and having a better time. And ultimately that's what we want, is we want the golfers to have fun. Great answers, guys. I appreciate the input there. I'm going to have one more question here surrounding our good friend, Mr. Jordan Spieth, and then I have a few other questions as well. Jordan, as we talked about very briefly here, obviously he was leading the Masters after 54 holes, but somewhere on Sunday, somewhere around the back nine, things sort of began to sort of slip away. I think that's probably a fairly true statement. What can a player do? Let's talk about that briefly, but what can a player do to handle themselves in a pressure situation? I think one of the things, this is just my opinion, but I think one of the things that caused some of the problems with Jordan, I mean, obviously he's a phenomenal player. He's a smart guy. He's a great ball striker, you know, great mental. But I think some of the things that we've talked about here earlier, you know, not making, you know, sticking with a decision of changing up a little bit in order to save him those strokes, I think ultimately cost him the tournament. And so what can the average player do to handle themselves a little better under a pressure situation? What are some things that they can do? Paul?
Two big things come to mind. I think that I definitely think that one of them almost virtually no, you know, amateur golfers, I think about while they're playing golf, which is breathing. I think our brains work better when we have plenty of oxygen in our blood. And if you can take big, deep breaths when you're under pressure or when things are kind of not going the way you anticipated, then it'll change the way you feel and your anxiety level will go down. And, you know, I think that's something that I talk about with students a lot. And it's almost like completely unrelated to golf, right? But it makes a huge difference when you're playing. If you can take 4 or 5 good deep breaths and let that air out really slowly, you're going to feel a lot better. And if you can continue to do that, you'll actually be able to think and kind of make good decisions. I think the second thing is that you have to be able to get yourself out of thinking about the outcome and more into the process of what you're doing. The shot that you have to play right there in front of you. Right then, if it's an 8-iron into a left-to-right breeze, then that's the shot that you have to play, and you just have to stay focused on that. Usually, and I mean, it's hard to imagine that Jordan wasn't thinking about being the youngest back-to-back winner of the Masters in history.
Sure.
It's really hard to imagine that it had to have affected him, and it's natural that it did, but you have to try to stay present. And that's my experience. I play tournament golf. You can find a pretty good state of mind to play in, and some might call it flow. If you kind of focus on those two things, I think you're not always going to find it, but your chances are better.
Right. Yeah, I agree with that. John, what about you? I mean, I don't want to suggest, and I'm certainly not suggesting that that Jordan choked or anything during that round, but it was very evident through those last several holes, especially when he hit Amen Corner. There was just a definite disconnection between his thought process and the results he was getting. In fact, there was at several times throughout the round, and understandably so, there was a series of agitation that was noticeable. And I think many of the amateurs fall into this same trap. So just sort of picking up from where Paul left off. Amateurs, and by the way, Paul, that was some great answers. I agree. Breathing, developing a sound breathing technique is extremely important, and I think sort of staying in the moment as well, focusing on the shot at hand and not letting your mind sort of drift elsewhere are extremely two important factors. But John, what are some other things that amateurs need to sort of wrap their minds around that can help them through a pressure situation?
I got to start with Paul's story. The breathing, the medical and biomechanical science is there to suggest, or not even suggest, but to prove that the more you oxygenate your brain and your blood, the slower things go. And under any pressure situation, Jordan Spieth or the club championship, you're going to speed up. And the breathing actually helps you get back into that flow that Paul was talking about, to stay in the moment so you're not racing ahead in your mind or falling backwards into maybe a rut that you're in that you're trying to get out of, yet you keep thinking about it, you're just digging the hole deeper. The other thing that I think we can learn from Jordan was he really prepared for being that repeat champion?
Mm-hmm.
My suggestion would be that he probably prepared very, very well to play well and to win. But it came, I'm gonna say, not necessarily too easy or too soon, so much as it wasn't paced.
Right.
He basically shot all his shots in the first 63 holes. And with 9 remaining, there was still more golf to play. He was probably spent. Did he prepare to actually be there? I'm going to tell you the pros do. They relish those situations. All great players do. Paul, as a tournament player, can agree with that wholeheartedly. You want to be in that moment. But are you preparing to be in that moment? And I think that's what amateurs don't do. They sort of fall into that situation accidentally. And it's cool and really good if you're falling into it accidentally because you're really not aware of what's going on. But as soon as you become aware, all of a sudden the tension starts. The gripping the club hard, milking it, the shoulders getting up to the ears, you thinking too fast, not rationally. It occurs because now all of a sudden it becomes a very conscious effort to understand and try to maintain that position. And I think when you look at Jordan, he probably felt that after the 3 straight birdies. Maybe he got a little speculative. Maybe he got a little bit out of the moment with a 3 or 4 shot lead. Who would?
Yeah.
especially with scoreboards everywhere you turn. The real key is keeping in that moment, but you have to practice it. And most amateurs have no clue how to practice that. Grabbing a great coach like Paul or myself or Ted or anybody that's on the program, that's what we do. We train people to relish that moment and really savor it. But you have to be prepared for it. And the ironic thing is you don't even know you're in it until you're in it. There's nothing that's going to prepare you for the red flag that says, hey, Paul, you're in the moment. It just doesn't happen that way. So you've got to prepare for that accidental slip into that moment. So when you're there, nothing goes untouched, but yet everything runs smooth as silk.
Right. Well said, guys. You know, something I just want to add here on Tuesday mornings, John, as you may be aware, Paul, I'm not sure if you're aware of this. I also host another show in the mornings called The Women of Golf, and that's co-hosted with LPGA professional Cindy Miller. And we've had a number of great young up-and-comers on the Symetra Tour, of course, leading into the LPGA Tour. And a number of them have made this statement, and I think this is something that could sort of fall into this category for a lot of the amateurs out there. And I'm not sure whether both of you incorporate this in your teaching or not, but what they tend to do, and these are the players, these are young ladies that go out and battle it out with other golf professionals week in, week out on tour. And what they do is they break their 18-hole round down into mini rounds of 3 holes at a time. And the reason they do that is it's less overwhelming, number one, but it also they play 3 holes at a time as they go around the course. And they do that actually even in competition. And it was interesting that you know, they had said that because, you know, when you really think about that, if you're just playing 3 holes and you're not really playing 18, and then you string those 3 holes, you know, and the next 3 holes and so on together as sort of a mini tournament within the tournament, again, it's number one, it's a lot less daunting, but you're focusing on a much smaller objective than you are overall, and you're not likely to focus on the overall score as much either. And I'm not sure whether this is something that you guys have sort of put into perspective with your teaching or not, or Paul, again, being a tournament player yourself, whether you've sort of adopted that philosophy. What do you think of that?
I think it's a good idea. I've done 6 holes before.
Sure.
But I think it's, you know, when I play my best golf, I'm really trying. I'm not thinking about the end result as much as possible. I'm trying to just kind of, you know, play the shot that I'm hitting, you know, make a putt, move on, and probably like vaguely aware where I am, but sometimes don't really even know what my score is, to be honest. Right. And it's the more I'm able to do that, the better I play. And so I think if you have, there are some people who can't do that, and I get it completely. And in that case, I think definitely breaking the course down into smaller chunks, so that, you know, if you had a bad 3-hole stretch, you can kind of say, well, you know, that round's over. Right. You know, I'm moving on to the next one, and the one after that, and those are the ones that matter now because that's all gone behind me. I think that would be, you know, maybe breaking it down into smaller chunks like that could be very useful. Yeah.
Yeah, and I think that's why, from what our discussions were on the show, really was the purpose of them doing that, was to be able to you know, in a sense, micromanage their round by doing that. And obviously, it's been effective. And I'm not saying it's going to work for everybody, but I found it a very interesting approach to playing, you know, golf in that facet. I want to move on to the next question here. As we all know from watching the Masters this weekend, it was unlike really many of the past Masters in the sense that wind became a huge factor for a lot of the players. You know, Sunday sort of laid down a little bit, but earlier in the rounds, Thursday, Friday, and particularly Saturday, we had certainly some very windy conditions, which is not normal for Augusta National. John, I'm going to let you start with this since I let Paul add into the last mix. How does the amateurs adjust given the difficulty of, especially of Augusta greens like that, when you've got some fast greens out there, and now all of a sudden you throw the wind in there? How do players adjust for the difficulty, and what can they do to offset sort of these windy conditions?
We had similar windy conditions yesterday with 4 differently skilled amateurs, and obviously the more skilled player is going to try to flight the ball a little bit lower, try to take a little bit more conservative route, but they also don't swing as hard. Mm-hmm. There's a great phrase that Nicholas is said to have coined: when it's breezy, I swing easy. There's absolute scientific evidence. I'm a flight scope user myself, that when you swing a little bit easier and don't swing so hard, it creates less spin on the ball, which in effect, from an initial trajectory standpoint of view, creates more of a rifling effect. Those first 6 to 8 feet are crucial to not only create vertical launch, but the spin ratios to keep it under the wind. Most amateurs swing really, really hard. And I saw that yesterday when the wind came up. Everybody started swinging hard. The recommendation I made to my player, it got through the group, was let's just take another golf club. Why swing hard? Let's just take another golf club. And in certain cases, like in a match play with your buddies, if you're given a stroke on a hole, just happens to be that handicap hole, you can afford to take more club, swing easier, come up short, and rely on your short game to get you in the hole. You've got that extra shot to play with, per se, in a match kind of situation. It's different. It's a little bit outside the box for most people, but what they're thinking intuitionally is, man, I gotta kill it. The wind's gonna knock it down. I watched our professional have his shots knocked down with a wind behind his back several different times. Just knocked it right down. And a lot of the amateurs don't understand that. With the wind, not only can it knock it down when you're hitting into it, it can knock it down when you're hitting downwind if you're hitting the ball incorrectly. What it all boils down to is, let's make a good decision prior to making the swing, so you can make the same swing regardless of what the wind's doing. Factor that into your decision making. For instance, if you've got 145 yards to the hole, and that's normally your 8-iron, yet you've got a 15 to 20 mile an hour prevailing, it's not playing 145. It's probably playing 165. It's okay to check the ego at the door. Take the 6-iron out. Just make a nice, smooth swing. If you're over the green, then so be it. But chances are you're gonna hit it pin high simply because you made a great decision. The minute you start trying to overswing, overhit, you fall out of balance, spin ratios go up, you're dead in the water.
Yeah, and that's a great point. You know, Paul, some of the other things, too, that I think a lot of amateurs don't understand, and maybe you can touch on a little bit of this as well, dealing with the wind. You know, often you'll hear some of the commentators will talk about, you know, on the putting surface, you know, maybe widening their stance a little bit, some of the players, in order to give them a more stable base. Same applies with the full swing as well. You know, normally if your feet are shoulder width apart, in windier conditions, you may want to widen that, especially with the driver. You want to widen them a little bit even more, depending on how you play, but particularly in windy conditions, to give yourself a more stable base. What are some other adjustments maybe players could make to help fight some of the wind?
I love playing in the wind. I grew up in Chicago on a great little public golf course that was right on Lake Michigan, and it was like a survival skill. If you didn't know how to play the ball low and play golf that way, you just weren't going to score. So I think, like John said, you know, a lot of people put the ball back in their stance to knock it down, and because of the swing direction and kind of deplane, you know, aspects of some of the stuff that we know from teaching with radar, like flight scope, is if you do that, you're prone to really hook it and lose control of the golf ball. So leaving the ball kind of in its normal position in your stance and just taking a little bit of extra club, like John said, is really important. Sometimes 2 or 3 extra clubs, and just, taking the spin off the golf ball like that. But definitely, trying to keep yourself stable, making sure that you're making balanced, smooth, easy golf swings, because you're more likely to lose your balance in the wind. A lot of people are more likely to just kind of swing harder because they feel like they're fighting the conditions.
Right.
And you're a lot better off if you can kind of just tone it down, maintain your balance, make sure that you strike the ball in the middle of the club face, and flight it down with 2, maybe 3, sometimes, extra golf clubs. Aiming at more conservative targets is also, I think, really important, because you just don't know. A gust can come up and blow your ball sideways, and you're just not going to hit the ball as precisely as you do when you don't have to stand a little bit wider, and make a shorter golf swing, and you might be wearing an extra sweater or something,
right.
and suddenly your golf swing just feels different. So, I think the average tour player hits a sand wedge 17 feet from the hole. So if you look at that, that's 6 yards on either side of your target. Most of us don't really think of it that way, but we're basically playing a window. We're not hoping for the ideal shot. We're kind of going to aim that window, and on a windy day, that window is going to get bigger.
Right, exactly.
So you have to aim the window at a more forgiving piece of land so that you can get your ball on the green, which is really critical for good scoring.
Right, and I think the other thing too to add, guys, is Paul, as you had indicated earlier, if a player's pattern is maybe leaking a little bit from left to right, or even right to left, or a little bit falling a little bit short, you need to be able to make adjustments even more so in windy conditions. So you need to factor these things in with whatever you've taken to the golf course that particular day, whatever game you're playing with. You need to factor that in more so, I think, in windy conditions, because it's going to certainly play havoc, as we saw this past weekend. I had a few more questions here, but I'm going to sort of wrap them up together here, just because we're getting close to our time. We all saw, Bernhard Langer, Tom Watson, and others who are what I would classify as some of our more seasoned veterans of the game, still playing in the Masters. But obviously, as Tom Watson felt in his comments after the rounds, that he just didn't feel he had the game in him to compete against some of the young guns. Does there come a point when experience no longer gives them enough of an advantage to be competitive with some of the younger players coming up? And I certainly don't want to suggest that Tom or Bernhard or even Ernie Els would be classified as an underdog in the tournament. But, John, I'm going to start with you, and then Paul, I want you to chime in as well. When you're dealing with some of the older players, what do they need, or is there anything that they can do to remain competitive against some of these younger players? Is their experience enough? Or are there other things that they may have to factor in order to be able to be competitive against some of the current guys coming up?
Bernhard Langer was impressive. Period.
Right.
I've seen him play. I've personally seen him play. Was he 56? I think they said 56,
yeah.
58. He's in impeccable fitness shape. He just is, and that's why he was there in contention Sunday. The length of the golf course compared to when he won his green jackets, different. Speed of the greens, right. Different. Shaping of shots, slightly different. But bottom line is he's older. He is almost 30 years older than the competitors out there that were in the hunt. Jordan Spieth especially. There's only but so much you can do physically to keep up with everybody.
Yeah.
You play your game, you play your plan, as we had talked about it earlier in the show this evening. But at some point, it was just the conditions as well as probably the moment that Bernhard wasn't necessarily prepared for. When you're 56, 58 years old, you've got a couple of green jackets under your belt, and you go because you've been invited. You're going with the idea that, hey, I'm gonna represent myself. Well, I'm not going to embarrass myself. I forget what pro said this in their news conference. They said, "Am I surprised that he's up there?" No, he wins almost every week on the Champions Tour. That's how well he prepares, and that's why we saw him there. So again, it goes back to this preparation kind of thing. Tom Watson, I think he's 60-something. When you look at his drive off of 18, his final hole, and where it ended up in comparison to his playing partners or in comparison to other places or other people throughout the rounds, that in itself is indicative of not necessarily a skill level. You've heard Arnold Palmer and Nicklaus and everybody say, well, my skills start diminishing at a certain age. That certain age has grown into the 60s, and Mr. Watson's a fantastic example of that. But there just comes a time where those skills, no matter how hard you work on them, Father Time catches up with you. And the way he did it was classy. He's a classy individual. He did it the right way and stepped out versus the Masters Tournament Committee sort of saying, yeah, you got a lifetime invitation, but we're withdrawing it from you. See you at the Champions Dinner Tuesday night. And they've had to do that to some people in the past because they were shooting embarrassing scores. It's okay. I think if the average amateur looks at this and says, even the best players in the world reach a point, it's not that their skills diminish, they plateau, and they try to ride that plateau out into the sunset as long as they can.
Sure.
But at some point, do you hang it up? Professionally, yes. From a hobby, from a daily activity standpoint of view, why do you have to hang it up? You can just keep playing this until you drop dead if you want it. It's just a matter of keeping it realistic with your expectations, how you prepare, and who you're playing with.
Yeah, I agree with that. And I think Nicklaus really said it best, when his time came, is that, as long as he was not able to be competitive in his mind the way he felt he should be, he didn't want to be out there against some of the up-and-comers and that. And I agree with that. And it was for the very same reasons as you suggested. Paul, let me ask you just from a slightly different perspective. I think one of the other things, does experience sometimes with some of these older players work as a disadvantage in the sense that some of the younger players coming up, there's a certain naiveness. They're going to go for things. They're going to be much more aggressive because they don't have sort of that same experience under their belt. I mean, they're certainly top-notch players. They're great players. They know how to hit the ball and move it around. But they haven't had the years of experience where maybe an older player like Tom Watson, not necessarily Bernhard, but some of the others out there, they know what their limitations are, and maybe they're going to scale back a little bit because they know they don't have the ability to pull off certain shots that they once did. Whereas maybe a younger player is going to be more aggressive out there. Does that become a factor between the two, between the younger and some of the older seasoned players?
Yeah, sure. I think a lot of it has to do actually with the conditions and how the golf course is playing. I mean, if the course is playing soft and there isn't a lot of wind, obviously that plays into the hands of younger, more aggressive players. And the competition on the PGA Tour is so strong that you really do have to take some chances to win out there. And I think when if you combine those two things, younger players are probably more likely to take those risks, whereas older players are more likely to be kind of the high percentage game planners, so to speak. So if you have tough conditions, but maybe the course is playing faster and they can get their tee ball out there far enough and then play smart golf, difficult conditions probably play more, or give those players a chance, the older players who play, smarter golf, so to speak. Not that the young guys don't, but there's, like you said, there's a different level of kind of aggression. I guess that would, I think, be the difference.
Yeah, and I think the experience factor comes in, as you were suggesting. I think with the older players, they know they've been in these situations multiple times, more than some of the younger players coming up, and they're able to adjust accordingly, maybe at a quicker pace. But as John suggested, there comes a point in time when all the experience in the world is sort of swept aside as Father Time catches up with us all. And it's certainly catching up with me pretty quick, so I can relate in that standpoint. But great discussion, guys. I appreciate that. And one of the things that I really want to do with this year is, I don't want to get into sort of the same routine of fixing some of the same problems, in the amateurs golf swings. We hear all the same questions. How do you fix my slice, and how do you do that? I want to really start getting into other areas to allow us to be able to help some of the amateurs out there, because I think there has been a level of frustration. John, I know you've been on the program a number of times that I've tried to articulate that there has been a level of frustration. Handicaps are still kind of plateaued. People are still sort of shooting the same handicap, if you will, that they have been for a number of years, and they're not able to get to that next level. And I think it's because they're trying to, find that magic potion, if you will, that really doesn't exist. A lot of hard work, John, as you talked about. You have to get out there and be willing to put the time in. So, I suggest that for those amateurs listening out there that want to improve their game, there's two great guys on the show tonight. If you're in their area, I suggest you reach out. And Paul, I'm going to let you very quickly before we close off, let the folks know if they want to reach out to you, how they can go about doing that. And then John, I'll let you close out.
Ted, thank you so much for having me. I really appreciate it. And, look forward to talking to you again later on this season. I'm the director of instruction at Forest Gate Country Club. We're located in Monroe Township, New Jersey, and my website is www.paulcastergolf.com. You can also go to the club's website, which is www.forestgatecc.com. And reach me either way, and definitely into finding alternative ways to help people lower their scores. I'm actually teaching a course starting this year, called Lowest Score Wins. It's based on a great book that was written by two good friends of mine, Dave Wedzik and Eric Barzeski, and it's all about basically game planning and lowering your scores without really doing anything to your golf swing.
Yeah, Dave has actually been on the show before. I'm very familiar with him. Well, when you come back on, Paul, maybe we can talk a little bit more about that and what you're doing there. And thank you very much for joining us on the Coach's Corner panel. Appreciate your thought and your professionalism and your input for the audience. And John, I know you've got lots of great information out there to help some of the amateurs. Where can they get in touch with you?
Well, they can find me similarly to Paul, just my name, johnhughesgolf.com. I'm in Orlando, Florida. I do some traveling for my clients, as alluded to earlier. Paul, really great comments tonight. It was a pleasure being on the show with you. If there's anything I can ever do for you from down here, please let me know. And again, Ted, thanks. It's always an honor to be on board with you and do the Coach's Corner. The thing I'd like everybody to sort of think about is we really talked about things outside the box, non-mechanical. We threw some scientific things in there every once in a while. But what it all boils down to is playing within yourself. Early in my career, someone told me that I needed to manage the course. I needed to learn course management. It wasn't until I started playing really well that I realized it was self-management. And if you really thought about a theme for this evening was how can the average amateur self-manage themselves better with the current skills they have. And I think they got a wonderful education this evening. Think outside the box that way, but always remember who you are as a person, what you're capable of skill and physically, and as well as what your emotions are and what makes you tick. And so long as you stay within yourself and do that, you don't have to, as much as you do have to work hard, you can reduce how hard you work and work smarter by literally making better decisions based on who you are on the golf course. And I think that's a great way of summing up the evening. And again, it's John at John Hughes Golf for email. Phone numbers on my website. If there's anything I can ever do for anybody, as I always tell everybody, please reach out. Let me know.
Well, gentlemen, thank you for coming on the Coach's Corner panel tonight on Golf Talk Live. It's always a pleasure. I always get something out of the discussions as well. It helps me to advance what I do, and I enjoy these panel discussions, and I enjoy having the guests on the program. And as I mentioned to both of you earlier, take a look at your schedules, and as we progress through the season, let me know what are some prospective dates that you can come back on as a regular guest. I'd love to have you guys on here, and we'll get into some more discussion and see if we can help some others out there improve their game. But on that note, gentlemen, thank you very much. Have a great evening. Have a great weekend coming up, and I look forward to having you guys back on the panel and other future shows. So thank you guys, and have a great evening.
Thanks so much, Ted. John, thank you.
Thank you, Paul. Thank you, Ted. Have a great evening.
All right, thanks, guys.
Take care.
Okay, that was my special guests, Paul Castor and John Hughes, on the Coach's Corner panel discussion tonight. I see that my next guest, Rebecka Heinmert, is ready, but let me just very quickly, I want to do something before I bring her on here. After the Coach's Corner panel, I wanted to very quickly remind everybody, last week, as I said earlier in the program, myself and my good friend, Mr. Byron Casper, of course, son of legendary Billy Casper, and I announced a contest on the show. It's called the Golf Talk Live Major Champion Couples Contest, and it's really geared around the major tournaments, the four major tournaments, the Masters, U.S. Open, of course, the British Open or Open Championship, this is often referred to, and the PGA Championship. And here's essentially how the contest works. I've set up a separate email account, Golf Talk Live Contest @gmail.com. Obviously, the Masters has passed, so that one is now out of the way. But you have an opportunity to send me an email to golftalklivecontest@gmail.com with who you think will win the upcoming major championship. So you have until the midnight, the Friday evening of each of the majors remaining. You can certainly submit it now if you have an idea of who's going to be in the field or who your favorite player is. But you have up until midnight for each tournament to submit for that. Now, you can submit them all at once if you want, or I would suggest you do it individually. So that gives you 3 chances. For those of you that submitted prior to the Masters tournament, you have actually 4 chances. And here essentially how it works. Submit your answer as far as who you think will win the tournaments for the upcoming 4 major tournaments. And if you're correct in guessing the winner, your name will be put into a hat, if you will, and then the week following the PGA, the Thursday following the PGA Championship this year, Byron will be joining me back on the show, and we're going to announce the winner. And here's what you're going to win. You're going to win essentially 2 nights in the San Diego, California area. 1 night bed and breakfast at the Hacienda Hotel in Old Town, San Diego. In addition, while you're there, you're going to have 2 golf for 2 at the Salt Creek Golf Club. Your second night is going to be, again, at a bed and breakfast at the Palm Mountain Hotel and Spa, and golf for 2 at the Encina Golf Club. So you have essentially 2 rounds of golf and 2 evenings at 2 different great facilities in the San Diego area. In addition to that, you're going to be able to join Byron and have lunch at the Old Town Tequila Factory, which he will be hosting. And of course, Byron is an international PGA member, instructor, and as I said, son of legendary professional golfer Billy Casper. And in addition to that, in addition to the lunch, I believe Byron's going to set up a tour at the Tequila Factory as well, so it should be interesting and fun. You may want to do that after you play your rounds of golf, but I'll leave that up to you guys and Byron. But also included in the mix, Byron is going to include a copy of his father, Billy Casper's last book, The Big Three and Me, which I mentioned earlier. Billy Casper, prior to him passing away, he was a guest on my show actually 2 years ago and sent me an autographed copy of the book, The Big Three and Me, which talks about him and how he competed against players like Nicholas Palmer and, of course, Gary Player and others, of course. And it was a great book, really talked about, had some interesting stories in there. So it's a great prize. Value of the prize is in excess of about $1,000. So a couple of great nights at two great facilities and some rounds of golf in there. Lunch at the old Tequila Factory, hosted by Byron, and of course Billy Casper's last book, The Big Three and Me. So great prize. All you have to do is enter in, send your emails, include all of the. I put the details on my Facebook page and on the Golf Talk Live Facebook page, but I'll put them up there again throughout. But you have until the Friday evening of each of the upcoming major championships. As I said, the Masters has already passed by, so too late to end into that one. But submit who you think will be the ultimate winner of each of the three remaining major tournaments, the U.S. Open, the British Open or Open Championship as it's referred to, and the PGA Championship. And for each submission, you're one per tournament. By the way, guys, you can't do multiple. You will have an opportunity to go into the drawing for the Golf Talk Live Major Champion Couples Contest, and it is a couples contest. So, yes, you have to bring your spouse. But you'll get entered in there, and on the week following the PGA Championship, the Thursday following, Byron and I will announce the winner of the contest for the lucky couple that will get to enjoy this prize. So really want you to get involved in this, and the email address again is golftalklivecontest@gmail.com. That's where you submit your information. Make sure you include your full name, your contact information, address, and so forth, and of course your email address, and good luck. And I hope some lucky winner out there gets to enjoy the great prize. As I mentioned, my special guest this evening is Rebecka Heinmert. She's been on the show before with Jamie Leno-Zimron and others, talking about an upcoming golf retreat. We're going to talk about that and some other things tonight. But just to remind everybody, Rebecka, of course, has been a member of the LPGA since 2004 and is currently the LPGA Western Section Secretary. She played professionally for 3 years on the Futures Tour, which is now, of course, referred to as the Symetra Tour. Rebecka teaches at Oakmount Golf Course in Santa Rosa, California, and has played golf, this great game, for nearly 30 years, or actually almost 30 years, and has taught literally hundreds of golfers and thousands of lessons. She is leading her third golf retreat, as I just mentioned, coming up for women on April 30th. And for more information after the show, you can go and visit her website at www.RebeckaHeinmert.com. And we'll read that again before the show ends. Her perspective on golf is a blend of technical skill as well as physical, mental, and emotional skill. And she uses the TrackMan launch monitor in her lessons and has realized that it has given a lot of improvement to her students at a very quick pace. So without any further hesitation, let me bring on my very special guest, Rebecka Heinmert. Good evening, Rebecka.
Well, good evening, Ted. Thank you for having me. How are you?
Well, I'm doing very well. As I was just mentioning, you were on a little while back with Jamie and Renee Powell. I think the last time Renee wasn't able to join us, but I think you were on there the time before when she was. And you guys are gearing up. We're going to talk about that in just a little bit about the retreat and all the particulars there and how people can get involved in that. But what I wanted to do first is talk about some things that you had sent some great points over that we could discuss tonight. And it is certainly a very exciting time in golf instruction. A lot of changes with technology and things out there. What are some of the things that you really admire about what's happening in the golf instruction compared to maybe when you were first sort of coming up in the ranks?
Well, I think there's a lot of things that have changed, number one. I think I sort of grew up when a video camera was sort of exotic.
Right.
And filming the swing and looking at the swing on video was really, really cool. And, and these days we can just so easily do that with our smartphones. I mean, it's incredible how even just that can give so much awareness to a player. It doesn't tell you the whole story, but it sure can sort of put at least a visual to what's happening in the swing. And for a lot of people, that's sort of an aha experience, and
right.
I think that's a great start. But there's a lot of other things that are happening now. Video has been around for a while now, and We have a lot of exciting technologies out there. With launch monitors is one aspect of it, but we also have body track, and which is the pressure mat, for example. Swing Catalyst is another brand of that, where you can measure the pressure of your feet in the swing, and you can kind of see where not just your weight shift is going, but also how much pressure you're putting into your feet, and it's really interesting and fascinating how much can change the swing and have an impact on your swing path and your swing plane and how someone is hitting the ball. So other things that are coming out is 3D, which isn't new anymore either.
Right.
Maybe not as user-friendly as some of these other things that I just mentioned. And then we also have, some other systems in the works that are coming out soon. But I think it's interesting to me how there seems to be this disconnect between what's happening in the commentating booth, I think, on the Golf Channel or on TV, in terms of golf instruction versus what's happening in the real world, And I'm sure you're part of some of those discussions online and on Facebook, and and there seems to be just it's just interesting to watch how there seems to be so much resistance to using this type of technology. Where I think for all of the people that I've taught, and I just have a great example from yesterday. I had a gentleman. I didn't ask him, but he told me he was 73 years old.
Wow.
And he said, I'm just slicing my driver. I don't understand, what's going on. I think I'm coming over it. We were on the range, and we're out there, and, he hit his first drive, and it was high and right, and I brought him over, and I said, your club face, this TrackMan here, this launch monitor just measured your club face, and it was 23 degrees open.
Wow.
I think we need to fix that. And he was like, wow, okay. So, in about an hour, he was hitting a little draw. And he was just, he was pretty happy.
I want to get into a little bit more, but I want to back up just for a second. I want to get into more. I agree with some of the disconnect that has been happening in the industry, and we'll get a little bit more depth in that here in just a second. But I want to ask you, and I think this sort of rolls into this. I think part of the reason, and I'll be perfectly honest. I think a lot of the technology out there is great. I think there's some great stuff. There's some stuff that really I don't think is going to benefit the golfer in the long term. But there is a lot of great stuff and many of the things that you've already mentioned. I think one of the problems that's happened in the industry that as a golf instructor, golf professional, we have to be careful of is that we don't overwhelm the students with all this technology. In other words, some of the technology is more for our use, to sort of ascertain what's going on and diagnose, if you will, what's going on. And then some of it is more designed to be shared. And I think one of the problems that's happened that's maybe caused some of this disconnect is I think some of them got so wrapped up in the technology and then sort of pushed that onto their students that it was overwhelming for the students because they don't have the same advantage. They don't get the same training and the same technical, information that we get. And I think this has caused a little bit of disconnect, and certainly correct me if you feel differently, but I think that's caused some people to sort of back away and shy away from some of the technology out there because it wasn't always used in the manner that it was meant to be used, and in retrospect, maybe confuse some of the students out there. So how do we so let me wrap this into a question. How do we make sure that the great technology that's out there and available to us, that we manage it in such a way that we use it for, number one, what its true purpose is, and that we don't get too wrapped up and confuse and overwhelm our students?
Right, and I absolutely agree with your point. I think, yes, you can definitely use technology to detriment. You can definitely have paralysis by analysis,
right.
Looking at too many different things at once. You have to, you're, as an instructor, I look at myself as a curator. I have to decide, what is the important part here. With the gentleman yesterday, obviously his club face was a big deal.
Right.
And that was what needed to be. He didn't really need to know anything else. He just needed to know that.
Right.
And for example, today I worked with a mini tour player, and all he really wanted to know was how far his wedge is at different levels. And so, and again, I have to discern there and say, okay, we're going to just look at we're just going to look at that, and I'll look at the other things while you're not looking, and I'll just tell you how far that ball went. There's definitely, I'm a feel player. I think golf is a game of feel, and I think a lot of people that say that shy away from the technology. Where I think that my perspective is that if you can confirm your feel, whatever it is that you experience in your swing, whether it's open club face, closed club face, et cetera, if you can confirm what it is, and you can make sure that that's actually what's happening, I think you have so much more power.
Sure.
And you can have so much more trust and confidence in your game. And that's my perspective on teaching these tools. I think you can increase your confidence level with it if you use it correctly.
Yeah, I agree wholeheartedly. I think some of the criticism comes from, and I'll give you an example, and it's certainly not everybody, but I think some people have, and I've certainly had them express this to me, not personally because of what I've done or anything, but just as a generalization, where, a lot of times, the instructors are looking at the monitors and they're not really looking at the player because they're caught up in the numbers and this, and I think that the players feel, and I'm not necessarily talking tour players, I'm talking just students and things like that they feel that there's a disconnect between the teacher and themselves, that the teachers are more wrapped up in the technology and rambling off numbers or scenarios and not really looking at the students themselves. So I think that is part of it. Mm-hmm. But to go on to your point about the disconnect with some of the commentators and that, I think that's part of it, what I just suggested. But I think the other thing, and as well, I certainly am aware of what goes on in some of the social media, and one of the dangers that I see in social media with some of these golf discussions is they can get pretty heated, and I'm sure you've witnessed a few yourself. Where somebody will come
Absolutely.
up and say, "I like so and so," and I'll be quite honest, I try to stay out of some of the conversations because I'll observe them, and I'll certainly pull sort of little tidbits out of those conversations, and I'll even talk about them on the show. But I won't get into the meat potatoes of the discussion sometimes because, and I'll be quite honest, and I think this is in any profession, golf is certainly not immune to it. There are some people in the profession that I think are less than professional in their conduct. I think that it's great to disagree, and I'm sure people come on the show and may disagree with some of the things that I say, and I have no problem in that. But I think there's a way of broaching that, and I can honestly say to this point, all of my guests have been very professional in that respect. But I think that sometimes in these social media, maybe because they're behind a computer and whatnot, they get very heated. That gets into name calling, and it gets into an unprofessional tone. And even some of the commentators that we see on the Golf Channel, sometimes in their commentating, it's just not serving the industry well, in my opinion, as well. So what should we be doing when it comes to some of this technology and some of this disconnect? How do we sort of get around this disconnect? What do we do to sort of change the mindset?
Well, I think I do what I do. Be the change. And it's a lot about education. It's a lot about not being afraid of the technology. And I think it can be super, super helpful. You can make a change or make a correction in your swing or your game, I think so much faster when you have this type of feedback. Whenever you can train and have feedback, and I think this comes from my background as a professional player, if you can have and train with feedback, you're way ahead. You'll get way ahead. Knowing your yardages. knowing your patterns. You know, what happens when you hit a bad shot? Like, what's your tendency? Like, what actually happens? If I would have known that when I played, oh my goodness, that would have been so great for me.
Right.
I cannot tell you. At the end of my playing days, I was really frustrated because I wasn't hitting enough greens, and I couldn't figure it out. And I would have loved to have this type of technology to just get some certainty around that. That would have been great.
Let me ask you something, though. I'm going to play a little bit devil's advocate here when I say this. Given the fact that, during your earlier times when you were playing competitively in that, and if you go back to some of the earlier players, whether it be on the men's or the ladies tours, that didn't have the advantage of the technology, but yet were highly successful in their careers, Nancy Lopez, Jack Nicklaus, Arnold Palmer, even Annika Sorenstam. I mean, even in her earlier time, the technology hadn't quite caught up to where it is now. If I was to present the argument, why were they able to be as successful to such a level, and yet we don't see that same kind of success today on an individual basis, despite all the advances in technology? And the other part of the question is, despite all this technology, and I agree it is good, handicaps still are sort of, flatlining in that area. Why is that?
Well, I think you also have to remember that courses are getting longer.
Sure.
Players are playing courses that are longer and longer and longer, and I think I'm not a huge fan of that development. I think it's especially for women. I think it's a complete detriment to women's game, because if you look at the average woman, how far they hit the ball, and you take the average man, there's no way that's 15-yard difference. So
right.
I think that is a huge factor in who's playing golf, and because everybody wants to play golf and have some success with it. I think that I taught with TrackMan for 2 years, and it's amazing to me how quickly I can get somebody to understand their ball flight, why the ball is going where it's going. The corrections that we're doing, it's not guesswork. At least the root cause of the program, the problem is not the guesswork. Sometimes you have to try different ways to kind of get around something, but at least we're not guessing at, what the club is doing and how you're coming into the golf ball. That is huge. You can get something done very quickly.
Right.
Change the slides, and and plus a lot of people want to say, oh, are you really sure? Are you really sure about this?
Right.
And okay, well, then you can just say, okay, well, here's the numbers. This is the type of equipment that the best players in the world use. You go to any range on the PGA Tour or on the European Tour, and there's TrackMan everywhere. There's a reason for that. It's not that they're blindly looking at numbers all day long, but I think it's to confirm what they already know and making sure that their patterns are right there. And I put this today. I had a mini tour player, and I put him on TrackMan. He's good. He's good, but he realized that he's competing with players who's using this type of technology, and he's like, I need to learn about this. And I'm sure if you look back at Jack Nicklaus and Nancy Lopez, I'm sure they would have been all over it.
Yeah, well, I'm sure.
And
yeah,
I for my Swedish background, you look at Annika, somebody like that, she would have been all over it too. There's no doubt in my mind. So I think it's every sport the last 10, 20 years. It's gone massively forward in terms of training, and that's just the nature of everything. Everything is always improving at that level. Now, if I can help my 73-year-old hit a straight drive and put his ball in play and make him happy about playing golf and playing more golf, I think that's awesome. I love that. It's so much fun to see somebody who's been just hitting, I don't know, small little shots to the right into the weeds, hitting a ball that he's like smiling about.
Right.
So,
yeah, and that's true. Yeah, that's true, Rebecka. I think that the idea, the purpose really of what we're trying to do is to bring some fun to playing this game. And it is a difficult game. There's no ifs, ands, and buts about it. But I think the more that we can help students and technology play, and I agree with you. I make no bones about it. I've said, many times on the show, I think the technology is great. I think it has to be put in the proper perspective and used under the right circumstances and not abused in the sense that, people relying solely on the technology. I mean, there has to be other components involved. But I agree. And I think there are certain people in the industry that are maybe fearful. Maybe they're afraid of the technology. They don't understand it and so are apprehensive. I'm sure that's part of it. But or are using it incorrectly and relying too much on it and not really, adding the other components. And so, I mean, it's a balancing act. It's like everything. You have to find balance, in that perspective. Now, the other thing.
Yeah, I think it's one other point there. I think it's really important, just like you're saying, it's always about the connection with the student. Because if you don't have a connection with a student and you keep looking at your iPhone or the numbers or, there's definitely a disconnect. One of the challenges, I'm teaching outside now with a lawn mower is that I stay present to my student, and that is super important to me. That's more important than looking at numbers on every shot. There's definitely something that could be said for also looking at a swing, not videotaping it, but just looking at it. So,
yeah, and
as an instructor, you're using everything you have. You're always using your full experience, all your expertise, all your experience to help the person in front of you. And, that is, and ultimately to have a better experience playing golf. In golf, just like you say, it's not just about the swing. I firmly believe golf is a game of skill, but it's not just a technical skill. It's also about a mental game, and I think you talked about that earlier on the show tonight. Right. About you can change and have a better game by not changing your swing at all, and I think that's absolutely true. But what about for a player who struggles every time they play to hit the fairway off the tee?
You're right. Exactly.
It doesn't matter. It doesn't matter if you have a superior mental game, if you're patient, if you are relaxed. It doesn't matter. And I hear this a lot. Oh, game, golf is 90% mental. Well,
right.
The truth is that the game is only 90% mental if you have some skill.
Right. Exactly.
And skill can always be developed. That's where that's where our job is mostly. It's also, if I look at my lesson today with this mini tour player, we probably hit balls for 10% of our time together, and then we talked for 90. So
right.
There's definitely that. But most of the time, we're always looking to develop the skills to play this game, and it's not bowling, and I think no offense to those great bowlers out there, but yeah, it's golf is so exciting because it has so many different aspects to it. It has chipping, it has bunker shots, it has the driving, it has the putting, and there's always something to improve on and work on and have fun with. That's what's so great about golf.
Right, and I think there has to be sort of a natural progression. I think especially for younger students that are just taking up the game, I think they have to develop that skill level first. I mean, there's not much point in teaching, somebody's strategy or course management if they can't or don't understand, the functionality of the golf swing, and they don't understand the basics of the grip and the stance and the posture. I mean, there has to be a progression. So I think, earlier on when you're first teaching somebody, I mean, you want to focus more on the skill sets and developing those, good repetitive skill sets early on, and then sort of progress into a course management and more of the mental side. I think some of the problems is, you've got players. This is the thing that always kills me, and this is where I think sometimes instructors fall a little bit short, and that's certainly not a blanketed statement, but you might have somebody that has, like the older gentleman that you were talking about, maybe has one minor issue, but will come to an instructor and they're basically remapping his his genealogy, if you will, and he comes out worse off than what he was coming in, and it really, like you said, putting him on the monitor resolved that problem very quickly. Now he's a happy camper and he's going out there. You didn't have to change his entire swing. You made a few minor adjustments based on the information you were given. And I think it's the same thing with some of the younger junior players coming up is, we need to work with them in developing that skill set. And then the mental side comes into it at that point, and not the other way around. I mean, you can teach somebody how to navigate around the course, but if they don't have a reasonable skill set, they're still going to be frustrated and have difficult challenges. And I think this is really what the point you're trying to get across, correct?
Yes, absolutely.
And and this is where it takes some time. It's not just again the equipment and the technology is out there to help us as instructors to be able to make better decisions that will affect the outcome of our students' results. And again, it's not about impressing them with numbers, and it's not about fancy words and things like that. It's about understanding the information that we can gather through this technology and making an informed decision to be able to go back to the student and saying, hey, your club face was open 23 degrees. Here's what we have to do to make adjustments. So now you're more informed as an instructor. You're able to articulate that information to your student, and he or she is going to benefit long term. So you're right, 90% of the game is mental, but there has to be a reasonable skill set involved as well for that really to come in play. You mentioned earlier, Rebecka, that you consider yourself a field player. Define what you mean by a field player. And some people might argue and say that feel doesn't really matter. Why do you feel that feel is important, at least in your game? And why are some people feel and some people not?
I think everybody feels. I mean, if I touched your hand or somebody touched your hand, you would certainly feel it. Hopefully, anyways.
Right.
I think, some players say that they learn more by, let's say, visual feedback or auditory feedback, and some have a better learning experience if they get a feel for something.
Right.
And I think my argument is that if you're playing golf, you are feeling. You must.
Right.
There's something there that helps you get around the course to understand how hard you need to hit that chip shot, how hard you need to hit the putt. That's feel. Some have more of it, some have maybe a little less of it, or it's not developed yet. So I think feel is an integral part of golf. Yeah. I think feel is closely related to awareness. And I think in my lessons or in my coaching, my underlying objective is to help develop more awareness. And if the technology and the video and the body track can do some of those things, great. I certainly got a lot of new awareness when I started using the TrackMan about my own swing and my own game. And now I understand my patterns so much more. So if I, at my level, at a professional playing level, can have such a revelation, I know that others can too, and not just players who are a single-digit handicap. It can benefit a wide spectrum of players. Perhaps not, the beginner player in the first lesson, but certainly, maybe starting in the fifth lesson. And I'm going to say it that early because if that, maybe you're just working on club face at the start. And club face is a pretty big big deal. If you can feel the club face and put a feel to what the club face is doing, it will help you develop that sensation, what that is, very quickly. And at first, when you take a golf club in your hand, and I can do this because I can do it left-handed, because that's where my awareness isn't very good. And if I can start feeling the club face and relate to what it feels like based on the feedback on a launch monitor, then I know I can improve faster.
Right. Now, so an interesting point that I wanted to make, because you'd mentioned this in some of your notes, of course, being an LPGA teacher professional, and you were also the secretary of the LPGA Western section, but you actually did, starting last year, did some TrackMan seminars for that section, and as a result, many of the other professionals in their clubs are starting to make some investments as well in that technology. So obviously, they're seeing the benefits like you are. Is that something that we need to see more of, exchanging information? Certainly we're all competitive to a certain degree in our own fields, but is it something that we need to be communicating more and more throughout the industry with one another? And I know the LPGA does a great job in helping one another, sort of elevate their, and I'm talking about the teaching professionals now, but is this part of the reason why you wanted to do that, was to share that information with your fellow professionals, to say, hey, this is an area that you need to be more involved in. It's going to help you not only for your own games, but it's going to help you working with your students. Is this one of the reasons why you wanted to pursue that?
Yeah, it was. I wanted to share some of the things that I had learned. I think that could benefit others in terms of learning about ball flight. There's been a lot of changes based on TrackMan technology and in the swing and what creates what kind of ball flight. So now we have some measurements. There's some arguments of the ball flight laws, if you will.
Right.
When I grew up, I was taught that what my swing path was doing was, that was the master of where my ball was going.
Right.
Turns out that's not quite right. The club face is more important. Shocker.
Right.
But there's been some argument about that, and it's interesting to see. And once you start to kind of share that information and that knowledge, I think that's great. I think sharing information is really great. Why not? I don't understand why you should hold on to it yourself, and when something can benefit others in terms of their teaching. And I had a fellow professional come down and asking me questions about TrackMan, and I welcome that. If anyone has questions that they think I can help them with, if they're new to TrackMan or just bought a unit, I'm more than happy to be a resource. It's fun, I love it. I think I'm not saying that everybody want to do that or go that route, but clubs are even making that investment. At Oakmont, they actually bought a flight scope for our indoor lab there.
Right.
So that's really exciting, and I know other places as well that are making that investment, and other LPGA professionals also that are making an investment to get a launch monitor, because it just makes a whole lot of sense. I think that's where that's where instruction is going, and the more
I think you. Right. You think you do have to change with the times, as an example, really a lot of these things that you're talking about are really tools of the trade. And you certainly don't necessarily, one of the things, and I'm sure you've been down to the PGA merchandising show in Orlando before, and, there's always something new and exciting coming out every year. And you certainly can't, as a professional, go out and grapple onto everything. You'd be in the poorhouse if you did, but there is a lot of general technology that's out there that's sort of mainstream, that becomes mainstream at some point, and it is certainly important to have access to that technology. And it may be in stages depending on where you are in your instruction and the facility you're with. Sometimes it takes a little extra convincing that, hey, it's worth the investment, because let's be honest, some of this technology is not always cheap. But if you look at the what you're getting out of it, and it's not just the ROI. I mean, clubs obviously look at, what's the return on investment, what's the bottom line, that sort of thing. But it's also, what is it going to do for the level of instruction that they have to offer? Obviously, the higher level of instruction they're able to offer and benefit with results, they're going to attract more clientele, which adds to other areas of the club as well. So there's definitely big advantages of that. I want to move away from, if we can, from technology, because I know that one of the other things that you want to talk about is the retreat, because there's a retreat coming up here in just literally less than a couple of weeks. So talk about that, and I think you have an offer as well for that retreat. So talk a little bit about the retreat, what's involved, what role you're playing, and when exactly is it taking place and where?
Yes. So one of the other things that I'm passionate about is to get more women to be involved in golf, because it's a great game, and I think a lot of women shy away from playing the game because they feel they don't have the skill or the know-how. So again, be the change you want to see. So we're putting up on our third retreat. Myself and Jamie Lino Simran, we're leading a retreat coming up in Napa Valley. Here in Northern California, and we're going to be at Chardonnay Golf Course on April 30th and May 1st. It's a Saturday and Sunday, and the first day we're going to focus on short game. So we're going to go over short shots, chipping, putting, bunkers, inside 100 yards to the green.
Right.
And then in the morning, we kind of go over all the skill set, and then in the afternoon we go on the course, and the participants will get on-course coaching and interruptions in their patterns on the golf course in terms of, okay, well, here's the shot, how do you plan this shot, and real life situations, like what really happens on the course, and how we're gonna master this type of shot. What's our best bet here? So that's always so fun. I love being on the course. That's something I've been doing a lot since I started teaching, and it's something that I think is, our feedback on our retreats has always been that, the on-course coaching is everybody's favorite part, because it's rare that you get to be on the course with a pro. So
right.
That is really, really fun. The second day is focused on the long game. So we talk about full swing, irons, fairway, and tee shots in the morning. I actually will bring out my TrackMan then. We'll talk a little bit about how to use that. We'll probably talk a little bit about video technology. We don't go too in depth here, but depending
right.
on the level of interest, and we always tailor our instruction to the group. So we also go over golf fitness warm-ups and some exercises that one can do to kind of get ready for golf. And we talk about swing sequencing and lower body power as well. So that's the focus for the second day, and then again in the afternoon we'll go out and work on the course, and again you'll get real life feedback on what's happening, and I play with each group that's coming out, and we do different scenarios and work to reinforce what we've talked about in the morning. So. Great fun.
Well, I like the fact, really three things. Number one, I'm glad that you and Jamie and that are really focusing on trying to get more women to play. I think, women want to get out and have fun too, and golf, as challenging as it can be at times, under the right circumstances, can be a lot of fun for anybody. And that's really what we want to try to do in the golf industry right now. And that's one of the reasons why, I do this program and have so many great, talented professionals joining me here, is really to, not just go through how to fix this and how to fix that, but to explain that, with the right tools and with the right attitudes, you can go out and make fun. Whether you're shooting, par, or whether you're shooting 105, you can still have fun at this game. And depending on how much effort you're willing to put into it is going to dictate, what level you're going to be playing at. But you can still, even a 30 handicapper can go out and have a lot of fun. And the other thing that I like about the retreat that you're doing as well with you and Jamie is the fact that you're not just sort of sitting in a classroom environment or that sort of thing, or in a round table, so to speak. You're getting out on the course, as you said, in real time situations and explaining to them. So there's a little course management involved as well. It's not just talking about how to swing and hit and so on and so forth. There's health factors involved, how to prepare properly before a round, how to get the best out of exercise without it's not about bulking up in that, but it's about really helping your flexibility in other areas that I know that you guys work with. But getting yourself prepared before we even get up to the first tee, and then on that real course situation is giving people a little bit of course management, if you will, and understanding why they need to do certain things and under what conditions. So it sort of encapsulates really the whole area of golf. And I like that you ladies have been doing this now, and this is your third retreat, as you said, and obviously they've been successful because you keep adding more, and I'm still waiting for my invite to one of these retreats. Especially since you always, the other thing I think I said this the last time that you and Jamie were on here, is I noticed that there seems to be a wine component somewhere in this retreat. Napa Valley and Chardonnay Golf Club. I mean, there seems to be that wine component. So obviously, it sounds like you have a lot of fun. It's not just all golf and instruction and things like that. There's a lot of a fun component to it as well. So for those listening,
on the Saturday night, I always like to pick a restaurant for us to go to, and the more the merrier. So
right.
That invite is coming out. So I love food and wine, so that's part of.
Well,
I'm a huge Yelper, and I love finding new restaurants and trying new food. So that's part of what I love to provide. One other thing I wanted to mention too is that when I started playing golf, it was a social game to me. I played with my family and my sister, my dad and my sister,
right.
And I think most people, I think, where you kind of play golf, but you want to play at least to a level where you can have fun socially. Mm-hmm. Because I think what I've noticed, and this is what I've learned over the years, is that if the player really, really struggles with the game, it's hard to get that enjoyment and sort of
sure.
Have it be sort of easy and relaxing to play golf versus, I don't have the skill and I know it, and the self-talk just kind of goes through the roof where, I suck at this, why am I out here, I'm not enjoying this, just because these women are not quite at the level where they want to be, if we can kind of help provide some of the skills so that they can go out and play golf with their significant others, friends and family, because I think, a lot of times in our busy world,
right.
golf is sort of the antidote to that. It's a great way to spend an afternoon with your friend or your family, having conversations that wouldn't take place otherwise, getting to know someone in a different way that you wouldn't otherwise. And golf has certainly been that for me, and I would love to have that be the same for others. So that is, I'm probably getting a little personal mission here, but
no.
that's my goal to do these schools, and I love it. It's a lot of fun. I love hanging out with people who love golf, and want to get better at it.
Well, exactly.
So,
Yeah, that's exactly right. And as I said earlier, that a few moments ago, that's why I do this show. Is, I enjoy it as well. It's not just the teaching aspect, but it's just I enjoy the conversation, and I enjoy helping other people in whatever area. And as I've said many times, Rebecka, golf mimics life in so many ways, more than what the average person really understands. And there's many, many life lessons that can be taken away from the golf course. And it is a great social. In my opinion, it's much better than social media because it may not be as fast, but it's much more personable, and you get to know people, and it's become a great business tool. Obviously, it started that way primarily with men for years, but more business women now are starting to understand the advantages that getting involved in golf, what it can do for their business as well. Great for meeting prospective clients and so forth. You have an offer. Let's get the offer out there before we run out of time for this upcoming retreat. So I'll give the floor to you.
Yes, so we have an early bird offer, and if you go to the website, it's www.RebeckaHeinmert.com, and I'll spell that out. It's RebekkaHeinmert.com, and click on the link, and the name of the retreat is called Raise Your Game, and you can find all the information there. The program cost and registration is $5.99 for the 2 full days of instruction, lunch, and range balls and carts and green fee and all such things. Snacks are included in that. We do have an early bird special. It's $30 off, and you just use the code is BIRD at checkout. There's
Perfect.
also lodging available at the American Doubletree Hotel. There's a link also on the website if somebody wants to stay there. It's a nice hotel with a great breakfast.
And
all about that.
Yeah, and that's just in case you go out on the Saturday evening and maybe have a little bit too much enjoyment. You want to not have to worry about getting back on the road and traveling too far. So that's a good idea. I agree with that. I want to wish both yourself and obviously Jamie and others that are involved in this, and also to the people that are participating in this, all the success in the world with these retreats, because I think, this is really how the game is going to grow. You can put out all the advertisements you want on at your golf course to get people to come and play, but and I would say, especially in the area of women, there's still an apprehension by a lot of women. They're very intimidated. I'm sure you can attest to this, Rebecka. There's still a lot of courses out there that women feel very intimidated by going into the pro shops because there aren't, a lot of women around. They're having many eyes sort of glaring at them as they're walking through the door, and they're not sure. Maybe they haven't played very much golf. They don't know that much about it, and it's not always the most inviting environment. So this is something that we want to change in the industry, is we want everybody to come into the doors and be welcomed. And your retreat is really acting as a stepping stone because, not only will they want to go out after and have some fun with friends and things like maybe at their local public course, but some of these people that may not currently be involved or have a membership may want to join a club in their local area that they had thought about, but maybe were a little bit unsure. This is going to help build a little confidence for them and know that they can go out there, and it doesn't matter whether they shoot, par, under par, or, as I said earlier, a 30 handicap. They're going to go out and they're going to have fun, and they're going to understand the game a little bit better for some professionals who are able to work with them, like yourselves and Jamie. And they're going to be able to take that information and enrich their lives, and that's really what this is all about. So, again, kudos to you and Jamie and the others for putting this together.
Yeah, I think this is just a continuation of what I used to do when I stopped playing professionally, and I was working at a country club at a time, and I started a 3-hole group. And the 3-hole group was for women golfers who were reluctant to start joining the ladies groups. There was a 9-hole group and an 18-hole group at this course, and I had so many ladies go through this program and join the 9-hole group and the 18-hole group, and they had never had so many new members as when I was running this program, and it was hugely. I can just tell you that if anybody has a chance to start a program like that, go out and play with these ladies, kind of help them out a little bit on the course, play a scramble, make it really fun, and and easy, and you know, you cover a little bit of rules as it comes up, and you cover a little bit of, you know, club selection and where to drive the cart and all of that good stuff. You know, it makes a huge difference. And I still, to this day, have these ladies come up to me, and when I see them at, you know, random events around the Bay Area, to come up and thank me and say, hey, you know, thanks so much for getting me started, and, you know, I still play, and I just had my first birdie, or
right.
you know, and all this great stuff that happened, and getting them involved in the golf, and also, you know, getting out there and having a social group and people to hang out with, and it's really tremendous. So this is just a continuation of that, and I'm thankful and happy to be doing it, and I look forward to it.
Well, as I said, you know, I wish you and Jamie and others a lot of success with this retreat. I think it's a great idea, and you're certainly, I know it's just going to continue to build momentum as the word gets out, and I'm always happy to support you guys. So, you know, you have an open invitation to come back anytime and not only talk golf, but to talk about the retreats and let people know. So, Rebecka, thank you very much for joining me this evening on Golf Talk Live. Unfortunately, our time's just about up, but I want to thank you and wish you luck, and I will read out the offer one more time here as I close out the program. So for those of you that are interested in attending the retreat, there's still some availability. You can go to RebeckaHeinmert.com, and that's RebeckaHeinmert.com, and of course the www in front. And they're offering an early bird special, if you will, for the retreat, which is good until April 15th, which is tomorrow. Go to there and click on the retreat link, and if you type in the early bird code, which is bird itself, BIRD, at checkout, you receive a discount, an early bird discount. So make sure that you do that. And again, Rebecka, thank you very much for joining me on Golf Talk Live. And I believe you're going to be joining me. I think you're coming back on some of the Coaches Corner panels discussions. I believe you've got in the mix as well. And if not, I'm going to get you on for sure. But thank you for joining me tonight.
Absolutely. Thank you so much.
All right.
Always
good luck
a pleasure.
Well, thank you, Rebecka. Good luck with it. And say hello to Jamie for me. And I will have you ladies back on again before too long.
All right. Sounds great. Thanks again.
All right. You're welcome, Rebecka. Good night.
Bye.
Okay, that was my very special guest, Rebecka Heinmert. She's a Class A LPGA teacher professional and works out at the Oakmont Golf Course in Santa Rosa, California. And you can get more information on her and about the retreat by going to www.RebeckaHeinmert.com. Learn about the retreat coming up here at the end of the month. And also type in the early bird code. It's good until tomorrow. And it's BIRD, the word bird, in the coupon code at the time of checkout, and receive a discount for advanced purchase of the retreat. But it's a great opportunity, and I strongly suggest that you take advantage. Both Jamie and Rebecka are two great professionals and true great people in general, and very glad to have them on the program. And don't forget, for those of you, I mentioned earlier about the Golf Talk Live Major Champion Couples Contest, 2 great evenings, bed and breakfast, one at the Hacienda Hotel in Old Town San Diego, golf for 2 at Salt Creek Golf Club, and the second night at bed and breakfast at the Palm Mountain Hotel and Spa, and golf for 2 at the Encina Golf Club. It's a couples contest, and also lunch at the Old Town Tequila Factory, hosted by none other than my good friend Byron Casper, who is an international PGA member and son of legendary Billy Casper. And also thrown in there as well is a copy of Billy Casper's last book, The Big Three and Me. Total value of the prize is in excess of $1,000. So make sure you do that. Submit your answers to the upcoming 3 remaining majors, U.S., British Open, and the PGA Championship, who you think is going to win. Send your submission to golftalklivecontest@gmail.com. Make sure you include all your contact information, and we'll do a draw, Byron and I, the Thursday following the PGA Championship. Will announce the winner of the draw. So make sure you do that. On behalf of myself, thank you very much to all the listeners for the opportunity to come to you worldwide, and thank you for faithfully tuning into Golf Talk Live each and every week. And thank you to some of the sponsors and supporters of the program, Mr. Jonathan Laird from South Coast Golf Guide, Meredith Kirk from Meredith Kirk Golf, and Nikki and Tiffany Litherland. Thank you for all of your help in spreading the word. Mr. Bernie Pinder from OnticGolf.com, and of course Sean Kelly from LinkedGolfers.com, and of course my good friend Mr. Peter Doyle from Doyle Golf Solutions over in Ireland. Thank you, everybody. Thank you to my special guests on the Coaches Corner panel, and to my special premium guest tonight, Rebecka Heinmert. Thank you for joining me, Rebecka, and I will see you guys next Thursday right here at 6 p.m. Central, right here on Golf Talk Live. God bless everybody and have a great week.